They are called the lost, the greatest, the silent, baby boomers, Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alphas. Each name tells a story not just of an era, but of a collective pain. A shared experience so powerful, it forged an entire worldview. Today, we're breaking down the events that broke each generations and made them who they are. Let's begin. The Lost Generation, born between 1883 to 1900. Dubbed the Lost by writer Gertrude Stein, they were the first to experience the brutality of machine guns and trench warfare in First World War, which took more than 20 million lives. This was followed immediately by the Spanish flu pandemic, which killed 50 million more, often without allowing families to mourn. They responded by rejecting the Victorian values that led to the war. They embraced the decadence and escapism of the Roaring Twenties, turning their pain into groundbreaking art, literature, and jazz. They learned that authority was not to be trusted. They were the most traumatized generation of the 20th century, yet also the most culturally influential, giving us Hemingway, Fitzgerald, and Picasso. They left behind a blueprint for disillusionment, teaching all future generations that the system could not be trusted. The Greatest Generation, born between 1901 to 1927. Dubbed the greatest by journalist Tom Brokaw. They endured the utter economic devastation of the Great Depression, where unemployment hit 25% and survival was not guaranteed. This was followed immediately by the rise of global fascism, requiring them to fight and win the Second World War. They responded with stoic perseverance and collective sacrifice. They developed a waste not, want not mentality, hoarding everything and valuing frugality, stability, and duty above all else. They learned that hard work could rebuild a broken world. They were the conquerors of fascism and builders of the modern American dream, yet many were slow to extend the full benefits of that dream to all. They left behind the institutions of post-war prosperity, creating a golden standard of stability that future generations would feel locked out of. The Silent Generation, born between 1928 to 1945. Dubbed the Silent by Time magazine for their conformist and cautious nature. They were children during the Great Depression and World War II, internalizing deep scarcity and fear. As young adults, they lived under the constant paranoia of McCarthyism, where saying the wrong thing could ruin a life. They responded by keeping their heads down and playing by the rules. They prized stability, security, and conformity above all else, creating the ideal of the 1950s suburban household. They learned that flying under the radar was the safest way to survive. They are seen as the ultimate conformists, yet they secretly birthed the rock and roll revolution and the core of the civil rights movement. They left behind a play-it-safe strategy and a model of suburban life that their children would violently rebel against. Baby boomers, born between 1946 to 1964. Dubbed the boomers for the massive post-Second World War population boom. They came of age during the cultural shock and moral confusion of the Vietnam War, which featured a military draft lottery that decided life and death by birth date. This was followed by the economic stagflation and oil crises of the 1970s that shattered post-war economic certainty. They responded first with radical rebellion, championing peace, love, and personal freedom. Later, a significant portion pivoted to embrace hyper-individualistic capitalism and wealth accumulation. They learned that idealism could be swapped for security. They were the anti-war hippies who became the Wall Street wolves, defining themselves by ideological contradiction. They left behind a leveraged economy, expensive housing, and a deep generational resentment for the prosperity they were told was their birthright. Gen X, born between 1965 to 1980. Dubbed Gen X from Douglas Coupland's novel capturing their undefined status. They were the original latchkey kids of rising divorce rates, often left with independence and neglect. They faced the existential terror of the AIDS crisis and lived through the cynical corporate greed of the 1980s, capped by an economic recession as they entered the workforce. They responded with cynical pragmatism and the fierce distrust of institutions. Their motto became whatever. They valued authenticity over ambition and understood that job loyalty was a joke long before anyone else. They learned to rely only on themselves. They were the original slackers and cynics who quietly became the tech pioneers and entrepreneurs that built the digital world. They left behind the ethos of work-life balance and the concept of quiet quitting, teaching us that your job is a transaction, not an identity. Millennials born between 1981 to 1996. Dubbed millennials for coming of age around the new millennium. They experienced the world transform from analog to digital. They were raised on sunny optimism and told they could be anything, only to be greeted by adulthood with the 9/11 attacks and the ensuing war on terror. This was followed immediately by the 2008 financial crisis, which evaporated jobs as they entered the workforce, coupled with crippling student debt. They responded by hustling relentlessly in a gig economy and using self-deprecating humor to cope. They delayed major life milestones like buying homes and having children. They learned that the promises they were given were lies. They were labeled the entitled generation, yet they are one of the most educated and economically anxious generations in history. They left behind the mainstream conversation about mental health, burnout, and financial anxiety, forcing the world to acknowledge the cost of modern economic life. Gen Z, born between 1997 to 2012. Dubbed Gen Z as the generation after millennials. They have never known a world without the existential threats of active shooter drills in their schools and the constant doom scrolling of climate disaster headlines. Their entire social development was severed by the COVID-19 pandemic, which traded classrooms for Zoom rooms. They responded with pragmatic activism and a demand for radical authenticity and inclusion. They have no patience for outdated systems and are fluent in calling out injustice. They learned that the adults in charge would not save them. As the first digital natives, they are the most digitally connected generation in history, yet they report feeling profoundly isolated and lonely. They are leaving behind outdated norms around gender, work, and identity, moving with breathtaking speed to dismantle and rebuild the world they inherited. Gen Alpha, born between 2013 to 2024. Dubbed Gen Alpha as the first generation named with a Greek letter. Theirs is not a trauma of a single event, but of a condition, being the first true AI natives. Their cognitive and social development is being shaped by algorithms, YouTube Kids, and iPad parenting from infancy, all while facing a future of climate uncertainty. They are responding with incredible digital literacy, but are showing early signs of potential deficits in offline social skills and attention spans. They are learning that an algorithm can be a teacher, playmate, and babysitter. They will have access to all the information in the world, but may lack the real-world context to understand it. Their legacy is yet to be written, but it will likely involve redefining what it means to be human in an age of artificial intelligence. We've traced the scars from the trenches to the TikTok feed. The story of each generation is not only about their pain, but also inheritance. We are all living in a house we did not build, reacting to architecture drawn by trauma we never personally experienced. Your grandpa's hoarding, your mom's need for a pension, your brother's side hustle anxiety, your niece's climate doom, they are not flaws, they are survival strategies. They are often the best possible response to a world that, at a crucial moment, failed them. So the next time you feel that friction in those family gatherings, pause and listen to their story. You might find a new perspective of the world.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe for similar ones and drop a comment below. As always, thanks for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.